Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts. On Android, we recommend Spotify. Also, check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel for content around the South Florida sports spectrum, including our friends who cover the Canes, the Dolphins, Messi and Inter Miami, and more. Also, check out Prize Picks. Well, before that, Off the Floor, our Discord server, link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge. 10 different channels plus stage shows. We're changing the channels all the time, so we give you based on the season. Additionally, we take everything from Twitter that's cool. We put it over here so you don't need to deal with Twitter. The most heat information and conversation, it's Off the Floor. Also, as I mentioned, Prize Picks, use the code 5, FIVE. I keep talking WNBA and MLB, but I know what you guys want to play. We got football coming up. We're about 2 weeks away. We've got actually Canes and Notre Dame on August 31st. You're going to want to be on Prize Picks. So use the code 5, FIVE. Put down your $5. Get your 50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got an all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Both Alex and I are writing for the Sports Illustrated Heat page now. So sometimes you'll hear things first on Five on the Floor, and then you'll get a recap there from one of us. And sometimes we'll write something there, and then we'll bring it over here. So this is more that. Because we didn't have a chance to podcast yesterday, and we're at a dead part of the schedule. But I did post a bunch of stories on that site yesterday, just related to some information that I had, and we're trying to split this stuff up. So we've already focused on one part of this, which was how the Haywood Highsmith trade went down. This is another part, which is what's been going on with Terry Rozier. So I'm gonna outline this as best I can, and then Alex and I are going to try to come up with a solution, which I say is going to be a short episode. If we were actually going to come up with a solution, it would take us a lot longer. But here we go. Okay. Yes, the Heat have been trying to move Terry Rozier. It is not because they don't like him as a human being. In fact, nobody behind the scenes says anything bad about Terry, like in terms of his team commitment, in terms of his attitude, or anything. If you follow Terry on social media this summer, I mean, he's posted a couple things on IG about people doubting him. Mostly, it's just been pictures of his child, and he's doing family things this summer, and obviously he's trying to get himself back from a basketball perspective. But there's nothing bad to be said about Terry as far as what he's been around the team. Okay, so that, just to be clear on that. But obviously the organization, has come to the same conclusion that a lot of us did last year, that this has run its course. The Heat traded a first-round pick for Terry. They traded Kyle Lowry's expiring contract. We at Five on the Floor mostly approved of that deal at the time. We can't really go back on that, as did most members of the front office and the coaching staff. So again, a lot of people were wrong about this. They brought in Terry. He wasn't bad at the start. I mean, some of the issues that we were a little concerned about, shot selection, that kind of stuff. But, when he played that first, couple of months, he had moments. He shot poorly coming out of the gate, but he had a pretty good streak. Then he hurt his neck, didn't play in the playoffs, came back promising to prove himself, and there's just no other way to put this. I mean, it was just a disaster from the start. I mean, he started with Tyler Hero. Everything was bad. The ball handling was bad. The shot selection was bad. And then it just kept unraveling, and it seemed like, was it confidence? What was it? I can tell you that what we speculated during the season was true. Eric Spoelstra kept thinking it was going to turn around. Like he wasn't playing him to showcase him for a trade. He was playing him because he, among others, did not think that this could continue, that Terry had suddenly sort of forgotten how to do things he did before. But as we watched, he did. And eventually, Drew Smith started to get some of the minutes before he got hurt. Then they traded for Davion Mitchell. Davion passed Terry. Terry was out of the starting lineup. Then Terry was still getting minutes. Sometimes he was getting 35, 40 minutes, which we could not understand. And then ultimately was out of the rotation entirely. So look, the Heat have a ton of guards on the roster right now. We've done a separate episode on that. The Heat know that there's really no space for Terry to kind of find his way with this team. They have been trying to move him. They, of course, would love to get a pick for him, but nobody's offering a pick. No, I mean, fans are going to ask that. So I'm just saying they would have loved to have got a pick for him. That's not going to happen, right? Okay. So, and his contract is roughly $26 million, but it's not fully guaranteed, but almost all of it is. It's an expiring contract that could have value to a team looking to clear cap space, but there aren't that many teams that appear looking to do that because the 26 class is not free agent class is not what it was supposed to be. So you had that element already. And then you have this other element as the Heat have been trying to trade him, which is that he's still under investigation, not by the NBA. The NBA cleared him. Okay, the NBA cleared him of any wrongdoing. All right, that is true. Regarding this situation in Charlotte in 2023, where Terry left the game early with a minor injury, he never played again that season. But somebody won a whole lot of prop bets betting on him to go under, 30 out of 30. And so the NBA investigated but cleared Rozier. And as we've said, it doesn't mean he did anything wrong. Somebody might have had inside information from the Hornets or from somewhere else. Who knows? Okay. But the problem is the FBI has him under investigation now. And FBI investigations almost never end when you think they're going to end. And as long as he's under that investigation, I've talked to 4 people around the league who just use the same word. It's toxic in a trade. This isn't even come from the Heat. This is others are. He's untradeable because teams don't know how that's going to play out, even if they thought they could rehabilitate him as a player. So Alex, I'll start there and then we'll get into more of this. He's going to be in training camp. So you have a player that clearly everybody knows is not really part of the plans. How do they handle this?
Well, I mean, I really do think he just comes into it. He has to, he's going to be a professional about it. He's going to try to give it his all and showcase why the Heat should consider giving him another shot. I just am extremely skeptical that he'll be able to actually earn that. Not only because of how bad he was last season, to be frank, how piss poor he played last season, but also just, there's a lot of guys in that backcourt now who are projected to get a lot of minutes, and there's literally no space for him unless he just completely outperforms some of these other guys that we have, pegged for minutes there in that backcourt rotation. Because you look at Hero and Powell, that's 70 minutes combined right there, more or less, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got Davion, who's gonna play 25, sometimes 30, some nights. They just picked up Drew Smith, who, Spo has made it clear he is going to play him almost, as long as he's ready to go and he feels like he's good to go. He's going to play Drew Smith, right? For as much as people don't want to see him, on the roster, much less in the rotation. That's not how I feel, but he's probably going to be in that mix in the rotation. I just don't see it. They just drafted a guy who was a lottery talent with a 20th pick. I don't see any minutes for him. And then not to mention Pella is kind of like a 2 who's going to play some 3 minutes as well. But again, just there are no spots, no space whatsoever for him to even have a minimal role, a role where he's playing 12 minutes even. You know what I mean? That's not even there for him. I just don't see a scenario where he is out there playing unless there are multiple guys injured. And if he plays in the rotation at some point in the regular season, shocked would be an understatement. Because they went away from him last season, towards the end there. He was completely out of the rotation. And so now, with all the other guys in that backcourt, I don't see a spot for him.
Now, we have talked before about the idea of just holding on to him, that it doesn't make sense to dump an expiring and attach more assets. We've had these conversations so many times about them attaching picks that they're running out of picks to attach. They just attached another second-round pick to move Haywood, who is easier to move than Terry. Okay,
So
even
much.
though they couldn't move Haywood, they were trying for the whole summer. They couldn't move him either, but he's easier to move than Terry would be without the swirl. And Haywood, was at least somewhat effective in his role last year. Not as effective as they wanted him to be. Terry was not. Okay, so this idea like of attaching picks, like you're against that, right? Like you would you because at first my understanding is they were just trying to get a functional big back. Like if they could have traded Terry and somehow got some kind of a functional big. We've talked about, the absence of bigs on the roster. Now, they got a two-way Golden who they say they would have drafted in the second round, but that he's going to end up probably getting some minutes just because as an emergency big, or Kashad Johnson's going to get minutes because they don't really have anybody else right now. Getting a big would have been great. It's not going to happen. Okay, before I'd be stunned. Okay, if it happens, would you attach anything with him, or you just let this thing play out? I mean, you send him home. Like, what do you? Again, he doesn't seem to be a bad guy. Nobody says he's a bad guy. He's not a problem. I don't think he's going to be a problem. What do you do with him?
I don't think you send draft capital to get rid of him. And I know that like some scenarios out there that people have thrown out where like they trade for like a Vucevic or another like player who is perceived as a clear upgrade over Terry, which is just a low bar at this point. But in general, like I'm not with it. I don't think that's worth spending draft capital, especially after the move they just pulled off the other day. They should be rebuilding that, not trading stuff away so you can get a luxury when it comes to an extra big man. And like, yes, I would like that. It would be cool if they had another big man on the roster that you felt good about playing if you needed to. I don't think it's worth sending out more draft capital for somebody that is likely not going to be in the rotation. You know what I mean? Like I think like I made it clear how I feel. What I think is going to happen. I don't think it's just like a my opinion thing, because that is my opinion. That's what I would do. But as far as what I think they're going to do is, there's going to be two bigs, and it's going to be Bam and Ware. There's going to be minutes where the two of them are playing together, minutes where it's Jovic playing one of them, minutes where it's a small ball four with one of them. I don't think there's going to be another big in the rotation, and I don't think Terry is going to be one that gets flipped alongside like 2 second-round picks or something for an upgrade at big. I just don't think it's worth it. I don't like. What is that going to get you? Like 1 or 2 more wins on the season? I don't think it's worth it for this team. I think there are other paths with Terry. Like shout out to Wes from Locked On Heat, who I want to bring up this idea.
Hold the thought. I want you to get to on the other side because I want to get to the other option that has been seen. I know the one Wes has, and there's another one that was suggested to me. So I want to debate those quickly, but let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that right after the break. I'll let you go with yours first. I do want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friend Nanette. Find the Align Training Method by Nanette over at thevaulttraining.online. If you've been feeling tight in your hips, stiff in your spine, or like your body's just out of alignment, listen up. The Align Training Method by Nanette is offering a free 30-minute virtual movement assessment. And yes, completely free. This isn't some generic workout plan. You get a personalized breakdown of your posture, hip function, and movement patterns so you can train smarter, avoid injury, and move better overall. It's great for anyone working through pain, coming back from injury, or just looking to reset their body mechanics. So head to thevaulttraining.online to book your session. This is where smarter movement begins. All right, I want you to get to Wes's idea here, because that one I hadn't heard before. There's another one I have heard before, and I want to shoot it down.
So Wes's idea, the other day we did the episode talking about the Haywood trade and the different options that they had, and how it was interesting that they chose what they did. The other option, right? We were talking about waving and stretching. They, this is something that Wes brought up from Locked On Heat. They could have straight up waived Terry, and there is no, that doesn't pertain to the waive and stretch deadline because you wouldn't be stretching him. They would waive him. They would eat the cost of his contract for this year. Wouldn't have the dead cap hits for the next year. And then because he has those unlikely bonuses that it's like 1.7 mil worth of, they would get 1.7 mil worth of savings that would then bring them under the luxury tax and give them enough space under the, they're already under the tax. It will give them more space under the tax to actually sign a minimum player right now. And not just like, it wouldn't be just Kai Jones's smaller minimum, which is like 2.4. You could get an actual, like if you wanted to go with a vet big, right? Like a DeAndre Jordan or a Trey Lyles or whatever, who makes 1 million more, they would have space for that as well, I believe. So that's an interesting one because I don't think there's any risk of like, getting rid of a player who you had plans to play. I don't really think that's in the cards for Terry at this point. You could wait, they mentioned that on their podcast. They could wait a little bit, see how he looks in training camp if you really want to be sure that you're just completely done with him. But I think it's an interesting idea if you want to just add another big right away. But just in general, like, and something I wanted to say before is a quick aside, because I know I'm probably not going to get to it later. Just looking at some of like the on-off with Terry last year, man. Did you know that he'd had a plus 3.22 net rating when he was off the court and a negative 4.47 when he was on?
They were like a 44 win team when he didn't play.
I mean,
They
plus
were like
3.22 that's a pretty good team.
they were like a 44 win team when he didn't play. I mean, there's no. It's hard to make an argument, okay, against the fact that he put them in the play-in.
And then when you look at like I'm looking at dunks and threes all over there, all the metrics just red, like the percentiles red all over.
Jaquez wasn't a whole lot better, by the way, just to make it clear on this. But Terry was the biggest detriment they had by far. Well, Terry, you know who else got drawn into that was Jovic, because Jovic was attached to him in the starting lineup early in the season, and Nico was the guy that ended up getting pulled out first because they didn't have another option in the backcourt, so they ended up putting Haywood in the starting lineup to basically protect, and then it didn't work out with Haywood either. But no, you're right. Look, there's no argument against how bad he was last year. I'll just put it here. They don't know why. Like I've thrown, and I want to get to the other idea first that I got to shoot out before we close. They don't know why. Like when I've talked to a bunch of people, it's like the neck injury. They say no, he was healthy enough. Was it that he just didn't care about the game? No, he was working. It is one of those things. This happens in sports sometimes. Like Chuck Knobloch, way back baseball. Like there are some guys they just forget how to do certain things, and then the confidence spirals on them. And it just seemed like he tried to confidence his way out of it by doing crazier and crazier things, and then you'd have these sequences of these step back threes and all this stuff. But this was a guy who was not turnover prone before he got to Miami.
He put up his worst assist to turnover year last year by far, and also even more than that, like just looking at like in offensive estimated plus minus, he ranked around the 80th or 90th percentile in the past 4 seasons before this one, and last year 22nd.
Yeah, no,
he was in the upper quarter, in the upper like 20 percentile of the league in offensive estimated plus minus. He was a good offensive player at one point, even if it was for a worthless team. There was something there, and he just
his efficiency was not bad
in the
for
league
them
last year by eye test, by metric. One of the worst players in the league last year on both ends of the floor. And by the way, I mentioned the on-off stuff with Terry. You would think the defense would be where the biggest drop-off came off. And I mean, from it. It wasn't that. Like the defense got like 1 point worse when he was on the floor. The offense 6 points worse, almost 7. Like it's unreal.
No, he was unplayable offensively, but because they could not figure out why. And I'm telling you, this directive did not come from anybody else. Spo chose to keep playing him because he thought it would turn around. We said that at the time. He just has this belief that guys will return to their level as long as they're putting in the work. And I cannot remember. There are guys who've disappointed with the Heat, no question. Guys they've acquired. I have never, and I've been around them since 96, 30 years. I've never seen a player drop off like that. I just, without explanation of a specific injury or something or personal crisis or something, and there wasn't any evidence of any of it. He just forgot how to play, and that's the thing. Now let me throw one more thing at you before we close here. You mentioned this waving. I'll have to look into that because I've never heard anybody suggest that to me. So it seems like they could do it, but I've never heard it before. The one that was thrown out to me was you could buy him out. Now the problem with that is here's where it's an issue. You could offer Terry a buyout, right? So you'd pay less the contract, right? But you'd pay most of it or whatever. But the thing is, where's he going to make up the money? Would he actually agree to a buyout? Because as long as he's under FBI investigation, no team's touching him, right? So it's not like you get a buyout and then somebody's going to give Terry a mid-level exception. No, I mean he'd be lucky to get a minimum. Well, I guess, right? I mean, if look, that would be the only thing. If he really wants to play and he doesn't see an opportunity to play here, you could offer him a buyout for the majority of the money, right? But save yourself a little in that regard. Okay, it's not going to save you tax cap wise or whatever, but it saves a little money. And then he could go sign with some other country and play and try to, find his confidence that way. I mean, he wouldn't be the first to do that. We've even seen, look, here's the crazy thing. Kendrick Nunn would have been better in his current state than Terry was last year. And Kendrick Nunn ended up having to go overseas where he's an MVP
Michigan
now.
too.
Well, right. It really is like, I don't think anybody was hoping that this would happen for Terry Rozier. Nobody was wishing this on him. It's just, look, as much as it disappeared, it's possible he could find it again. I just am with you that I don't think it's going to happen in Miami.
There's just no space for it, even if it was possible. Like, yeah, like
no.
If you tell me, like, yeah, like this is not, I don't even think this is an optimistic way of looking. If you just say, hey, Terry won't be that bad next season, because it's going to be hard to be that bad again. It's hard to overstate how big that drop off was. Like, it's true. Like, I'm with you. I don't know. I can't think of many other cases like this where it's like you can't pinpoint why there is such a ginormous drop off.
Jaquez, you can at least pinpoint something. Second year player, he got scouted early in his career, confidence thing. You can at least point to that.
Several
with
years
Rozier,
this is player.
Right, and he was a playoff performer too. So this is a guy who has been on the stage, has been a key backup for Boston when they were competitive. Right, was highly efficient for a bad Charlotte team, albeit, but he was efficient. He was more efficient than LaMelo was next to him, and for it to just go when he hasn't seemed to lose any of the athletic ability, the quickness. I'll say, as he told me before last season when we were in the Bahamas, he says, "I want to play late into my 30s." I mean, he wasn't feeling like he was losing it. So it's a very strange situation. All right. Well, I'm losing my voice. So we're going to finish this up. But that is, if you want to know what's going on there, because I see a lot of this. Highsmith's traded well, but Terry Rozier's still on my roster. Look, it's not the Heat are not looking at it and saying, well, we got to keep Terry to see it. That's not how they're viewing this. They want the best for him, but they don't really see a path for him. They've tried to move him, but moving a player coming off a career worst season who's under FBI investigation, like that's not an easy thing. Like it's like you have a couch that's chewed up by the dog. Like then you put it outside, you're not getting what you paid for it. Okay, this is not the way that this works. Bad analogy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.